This is the 19th Taiku in Talmud Bavli, according to the book called Taiku by Rabbi Aharon Yeshua Pessin, who put together all the Taikus, which means the unresolved questions, for which we must wait until the Messiah comes. What's interesting about the 19th Taiku is that it occurs on page 91 of Tractate Shabbat. And here it is. V'chol adam ein chayav alav ela kishiuro. Ma'asnisin delo kar b'shimon ben Elazar detanya klal amar b'shimon ben Elazar kol shenikash letzniya v'matzniyan kamohu v'uchshar lezeh v'tzniyo v'acher v'tziyo ischayev zeh v'machshavto shel zeh. We also learned in the Mishnah, and any other person is only liable for carrying out on Shabbat if he carries out its measure for liability. The Gemara comments, the Mishnah is not in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, as it was taught in a Braita, that Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar stated a principle: anything that is not fit to be stored, and therefore people do not typically store items like it, but it was deemed fit for storage by this person, and he stored it, and another person came and carried out the object that was stored. That person who carried it out is rendered liable by the thought of this person who stored it. Amar Rav Rav Nachman atzir kegrageres lachilon v'im lachalei lezrio ina v'lezrio v'im lachalei lachilo chayav pshito zilachei kashiro v'zilachol ikashiro v'ma'udetema Rava said that Rav Nachman said, if one carried out on Shabbat a dried fig bulk of seeds for eating, and along the way he reconsidered and decided to use them for sowing, or alternatively, if one intended to carry them out for sowing and reconsidered and decided to use them for eating, he is liable. The Gemara wonders, this is obvious. Whichever way you view the case, he is clearly liable. Go here and examine his initial intention. There is a measure that determines liability, and go here and examine his ultimate intention. There is a measure that determines liability. The Gemara replies, Rav Nachman's statement teaches a novel concept. Lest you say that in order to be deemed liable for carrying out an object on Shabbat, we require that the lifting and placing of the object be performed with a single identical intention. And that is not the situation here, meaning that the change in his intention transforms his action into two separate half labors. Therefore, Rav Nachman teaches that it is considered a single prohibited act, and the person who performed is indeed liable. On the basis of this halacha, Rava raised a dilemma. Rav raised a dilemma with regard to one who carried out a dried fig bulk of seeds for the purpose of sowing, which is less than the measure that determines liability, and in the meantime the seeds became moist and expanded into dried fig bulk, and he reconsidered his plans for the dried fig bulk of seeds and decided to use it for eating. What is the halacha? If you say the two sides of the dilemma of this, if you say there, in the first case, he is liable because go here and examine his initial intention. There's a measure that determines liability. Go here and examine his ultimate intention. There is a measure that determines liability. But here, in this case, since at the time he carried it out, there was not a measure that determines liability for one who carries out seeds for the purpose of eating, then he is not liable. Or perhaps, since had he been silent and had no intention with regard to the seeds at all, he would be liable for the intention of carrying it out for the purpose of sowing. Then now too he is liable because even based on his reconsidered intention, he completed the prohibited labor of carrying out. Im timse lomar kevan de'ilu lishtik v'lo chashiv l'alei mechayev b'achshav ezriyo hashtanai mechayev ho'tiku gvez l'chilo itzam kavan amli chalel ezriyo mahu achavadai kishti kamachshav kaimen lo mechayev o dilma basar hashtaz linan mechayev dilma basar hashtaz linan mechayev ho'tiku gvez l'chilo itzam kachaz lo v'zizach mahu Yesh dichonin Shabbos, oyein dichonin Shabbos, Taiku. This is the 19th Taiku, which occurs on Shabbat 91. Very interesting. Okay? And if you say that since had he been silent, and had no intention with regard to the seeds at all, he would be liable for the intention of carrying it out for the purpose of sowing. Now too, he is liable if he carried out seeds in the measure of a dried fig bulk for the purpose of eating, and they shriveled until there was less than a measure, and they had considered and decided to use them for the purpose of sowing, then what is the of him? Here, certainly, had he been silent and had no intention with regard to the seeds at all, for the original intention, he is not liable, because there remains less than the measure for liability. Or perhaps we follow his intention at present, and he is liable. And if you say that we follow his intention at present, and he is liable, the dilemma arises if one carried out a dried fig bulk of seeds for the purpose of eating, and it shriveled until there was less than that measure, and then expanded to a fig bulk, what is the halacha? Is there a disqualification with regard to the halachot of Shabbat? Since at a certain point there was less than the measure that determines liability, he can no longer be held liable for carrying it out, even if it expands, or perhaps there is no disqualification with regard to the halachot of Shabbat. The crucial moments that determine liability for carrying an object are the moment that it is lifted and the moment that it is placed. At both of these junctures, the measure for liability was whole. No resolution was found to any of these dilemmas. Therefore, let them stand unresolved. Taiku, we must wait until Elijah comes, as he heralds the Messiah, to get the answer to these questions. Now, in his book Taiku, he lists 317 Taikus, but like I've made this point in the past, there's a lot of questions here. So there's probably a lot more than 317. There's just 317 mentions of the word Taiku, but each Taiku can combine several questions. So this would be a good follow-up book to Rabbi Pessin's book, to find out actually how many questions there are, literally. In each Taiku, let's say there's 5 questions in each Taiku. I mean there could, it's 317, it could be like 1,000 Taikus, really. But it's something to be thought about.